From dog tags to ownership, heroes take the lead. Stories of veterans building dreams with passion, pride, and speed. From service to success, we're here to inspire the quest. Dog tags to ownership, we're the best. Take the pride.
From the battlefield to the boardroom, this is DogTags to Ownership, the podcast where veterans share their journeys from serving our nation to leading in business. Hear inspiring stories of grit, growth, and the entrepreneurial spirit that drives those who've served to succeed. Tune in and take the first step toward your own mission in entrepreneurship.
Military One Percenters, welcome to DogTags to Ownership, where once a week we interview veterans who charted a path towards entrepreneurship. Here, our goals are to share resources, advice, and success stories about starting a business, discuss strategies for building financial independence and creating your own path, and most importantly, build a community to support each other through the challenges of transitioning from service life to civilian ownership. Well, Matt, we are here for episode 42, recap episode, recapping episode 39 through 41. Episode 39 was with Gregory Povenski. He's a PhD candidate with an emphasis in entrepreneurship through acquisition. And a major theme for him was, just how military leadership prepares you for entrepreneurship. And particularly, he believes military leaders are good for the entrepreneurship through acquisition space. Episode 40, Eva Fulton, who is everything, songwriter even, producer, PhD candidate, two-time podcaster, has had a cleaning business, construction business, Desert War veteran, but really the biggest thing for her, the theme was from service and struggle to purpose and creation. That's really what she talked about with us and how she took her life into her own hands after some ups and downs and said, this is what I'm going to do with it. That was really inspiring. And then episode 41, Jeff McCabe. He is a U.S. Naval Academy graduate. He had lots of jobs after he got out of the Naval Academy, or after he got out of the Navy, to include he worked for American Express, and then him and his wife moved back to the hometown. And then now he is one of the co-owners, founders of BWQOHT Inc., which is Big Woods Quaff on Hard Truth Bourbon. So it's all of his three businesses, the restaurant, the distillery, and the brewery, all in one for that. And the big thing for him was just lessons in leadership, mentorship, and business mindset. He definitely dropped knowledge throughout that whole episode. So I think any first thoughts before we get into each of the episodes, Matt?
No first thoughts.
Are you still recovering from your retirement weekend? Is that why you don't have any first thoughts?
There were some late nights involved in the retirement weekend, but I mean, man, we couldn't ask for better weather here in Kansas City for that weekend, and that was a fantastic time. Everything went mostly according to plan, which rarely happens. So a few little bumps in the road, but it was a great event, I think. So really had a good time.
Yeah,
probably too good of a time.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, if you don't follow us on social media, Matt is officially retired. This past weekend, we were all in Kansas City celebrating his final retirement after I feel like we've been celebrating it for 6 months. We finally got to be done with the Matt Cain retirement celebration, but it was a lot of fun. And also got to celebrate his daughter Ella's 5th birthday, which was really cool. But with that, Matt, I guess I'll go ahead.
You asked me before we start recording, what did I do this week?
But yeah, what did you do?
Since I've not jumped into the workforce, but one of the things I did that may relate to this podcast and our listeners is I went over to the VA hospital and did my VA registration / enrollment. Took a couple hours, had to fill out some paperwork. Because I don't have a rating, I was able to at least get slotted in a group. There's 8 groups. I was a priority group 6, and that's just because I essentially had combat deployments. So I'm enrolled. I can utilize the services. I can get a primary care manager, all that without a rating right now. So I'll just throw that little bit of information out there. That was one thing I did. I did many other things, but we'll just focus on the one thing for now.
Well, I think for you, as we were talking before we hit record, one of your properties had a big fire.
Yeah.
And so you've been dealing with that for the past, what, 3, 4 weeks now?
Yeah, about 3 weeks now. Significant fire at a rental property, and it'll likely be uh, a what they call a total constructive loss, essentially a total rebuild on the structure. It's been a significant learning curve, I guess I should say, dealing with the insurance agency, insurance policyholder, that sort of thing, and doing walkthroughs with the remediation teams and the builders to get some estimates and that sort of thing. So I hope to do a partial rehab on it myself. So I hope to kind of have a GC do a lot of the hard work on the utility, plumbing, electrical, some framing, sheetrock, and then I hope to kind of take over from there and do a lot of the cosmetic stuff myself. So we'll make a determination on whether we're going to hold on to that rental property or sell it while it's in the best shape it'll probably be in and roll that into another property.
Yeah. So I guess you haven't been fully not doing anything. So I will take back my
Correct.
earlier comments of what have you been doing this week? You should do more for the podcast.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so we'll get into it. So episode 39, Gregory Povenski. So Greg was a Green Beret. He got out, I think actually at Leavenworth is where he got out after his last tour. He was up at Michigan as a APMS, went to Leavenworth, and then retired out of there. Did some private equity stuff when he first got out, and then got into the entrepreneurship space through the private equity. And then now he is a doctoral candidate at Oklahoma State with an emphasis in entrepreneurship through acquisition. And the biggest takeaway from him is just how to utilize some of those transition services that you have, and then your ability as a leader to really get after entrepreneurship through acquisition. So a lot of people believe, and I tend to believe it as well, the big silver tsunami that's coming with the baby boomers that are, trying to sell their businesses and they don't have family that want to take over those businesses, are really looking for that entrepreneurship through acquisition space. And that's the one thing that Greg really talked about is what the data is on that through his research and what he's been doing for his PhD, and why military members are the best candidate for entrepreneurship through acquisition, and what makes us such great candidates. So definitely great knowledge in that. And if you're looking to get into the entrepreneurship through acquisition space, he definitely provides some great information on just private equity, what private equity is. There's a lot of myths, rumors, things out there about private equity, but how private equity can help you. And then what your return on investment, and then also like how long you should hold a property or hold a business before you should look at selling it for all that. So just great, just knowledge from him on that aspect. And again, just a thing that I think as people are starting to get out of the military, no matter how long you've been in, retire, or just get out, ETS, PC, or refrad, it's always good to look at what your options are. And that's an easier option than bootstrapping a company or something like that, where that company's already set, maybe near the hometown you want to live in, and you can just take over it and buy it from there. Matt, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think just, he had a very easygoing demeanor about him. And I'm sure, part of that was maybe just his personality, and part of it was, being in special forces. And he did 23 years, and he talked about, I was like, what was your mindset? Were you ready to go? Were you not ready? And, you've used this quote before, Julie, but from other leaders that have told you, like, when it's time, you'll know, right? Like, you'll know when it's time to separate. And he said that. I think it's, he was also big on, I think, not just kind of rushing into whatever comes first. Like, you can be fairly diligent in that process. One of those unique things about having 20 or 20 plus years in the military and having a pension, he talked about, is again, having the ability to not necessarily just rush into whatever comes first, and to be able to be deliberate in the process of figuring out what you want to do next. And he talked about how military folks are also uniquely skilled for, the transition into either the workforce or owning a company. It's just translating those military skills, into civilian language, if you will. So there's a lot of things that we're equipped to do, certainly from a leadership perspective, but I think there's a lot of other attributes that we come out with that make us competitive in the workforce or through entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I just thought it great information that he provided, and he's also done it himself. And that'll bring us on to episode 40 with Miss Eva Fulton. Eva, big thing for her was from service and struggle to purpose and creation. Eva, Desert Storm veteran, entrepreneur. She first got out. She had a cleaning business, construction cleaning business, and then construction business. This was back in the early 2000s. Not a lot of information out there for veterans who were getting into entrepreneurship. So she talked about how those businesses failed and why they failed, which I think is important for people to hear of entrepreneurs who have failed and why those things failed, and then what the services are today that can help you be successful. And then for her, after that, she became an author. My People's Garden is her book. She republished it back in August. I've actually sent it to a few people to read and utilize as they're going through some struggles in their life, and they've all come back and said, it's a great book for them to utilize for that. And then she's also a filmmaker. She has a documentary. She has put it in a lot of different film shows and things, and has won from that. And you can catch that documentary. It's on YouTube, on her YouTube channel. I know Matt and I both watched it. It's pretty inspiring in what she talks about in that documentary. And then the last thing, she is a podcaster. She has 2 podcasts. One is from Pain to Purpose. That's on the military broadcast radio. And then her other one is My People Garden. And that's based off of her book. But for her, like, her biggest thing that she wants to do is be a advocate for female veterans. I mean, she talked about that a lot on the podcast, about how when she got out, there wasn't a lot of female veterans who had been to combat zones. So she was in Desert Storm. So she was one of the first ones of those. And she just wants to be a voice for female veterans who are getting out to help them succeed in whatever their next transition of life is, whether it's entrepreneurship or not. And then her other thing is just owning your story, or as she said, her story, but then for other people is just owning their story and being a voice across those platforms for people. So that's what her podcast, From Pain to Purpose, on military broadcast radio. She brings on veterans to talk about their story to help others understand that all of us have struggles, all of us have things, but how do we overcome those? And again, it just goes back to her wanting to be that voice for military members, veterans, and in particular for her, it's female veterans. So thoughts?
Yeah. I think the one thing that sticks out with Eva was her ability to take on adversity, right? Like get knocked down and get back up. Like she embodies that spirit because if you do listen to her story, her documentary, multiple significant life challenges and being able to overcome those challenges and keep pushing forward to, continue to reinvent herself is super, super inspirational. And I think, not only did she talk about, accepting failure and moving forward with that, but she also, spoke to ownership doesn't necessarily mean you have to make millions of dollars, or entrepreneurship doesn't mean you have to make millions of dollars. It's about doing what you love to do. And for her, again, it's not necessarily about the dollar signs. It's about getting fulfillment through these different avenues, I guess, or venues that really fill up her cup. It's why she's probably a bit of an artist in a way with all the things that she does. Just super, super interesting person, and certainly a joy to have on the podcast.
Yeah, and I would just encourage our listeners and followers, go back, listen to episode 40, because Eva really does provide that inspiration around resiliency and reinvention, like you mentioned, Matt, and just a true testament to that and what we all think about when you talk about hardship and how to overcome that. And that brings us to episode 41, Jeff McCabe. So Jeff, biggest theme lesson from him was just leadership, mentorship, and business mindset. Jeff got out of the Navy. He worked for some different contracting companies, I guess I would say. So helping Ospreys when they were first getting built. There's another, I think, helicopter that he went and did a contracting thing, but he like lived around the world. He met, I think, his business partner, no, he met the guy that he went to American Express with in China in a bowling alley. That guy got him to go work for American Express. He worked for American Express for like 10 years. He did a bunch of stuff with them, then decided after 9/11 that him and his wife, they were gonna move back to the small town, that she was from, he had lived in for a little bit, and then just through talking with someone in the town, he needed a broker, talked to that guy, they were drinking Budweiser, he didn't want Budweiser, he wanted a real craft beer, and here he is now with a brewery, craft brewery, a restaurant business, and a distillery. And I'm just going to say Truth Bourbon is delicious. I was able to pick up 2 bottles here in the Virginia ABC store. Jeff told us it just got here, so I went to the ABC store, found it. Me and the guy at the ABC store were trying to find other sweet mash bourbons. There is none. We could not find any. So we'll say they probably have a corner on the market on that, but it is really good. I've been showing it to people and telling them about it. But just his story of taking risk, calculated risk to make his businesses grow was just inspiring to me. And I'll turn it over to you, Matt.
Yeah, I think Jeff might be like the real Dos Equis guy, like the most interesting man in the world. Right? And he was so easy. He was so easy to. I don't even know if I'd call it an interview. It was very much a conversation piece. And I messaged you earlier, just kind of re-listening to that episode, and I'm obviously going to be a little bit biased, but I was like, I feel like in a way our podcast kind of turned a corner, and it was just he was just he made it easy, but it was very much a conversation piece, and I think we really got away from some of the scripted episodes we kind of did earlier, in the podcast. But, the advice that Jeff was able to give, that he kind of wove throughout the episode, was so good. There were so many memorable quotes that he dropped while we were talking to him. But some of the things that really stuck out to me when he was talking, and a lot of those quotes were things that I latched onto. But as far as being deliberate about things, but also being open to opportunity, right? Like you got to have a plan and be deliberate, but at the same time, be open to opportunity. And that was one of the things he said he's kind of done throughout his life. He wasn't a military brat, but he was the child of a traveling salesman. So it was almost like being a military brat with his moving around constantly. So that just really resonated. Like, you never know when you're out talking to someone, being maybe deliberate in what the topics are in order to open doors and create other opportunities.
I would just say, for our listeners out there, if you haven't listened to episode 41 with Jeff, go back and listen to it. Just listen to his story. And then the biggest thing too is listen all the way to the end, because he drops some knowledge about what Byron Nelson taught him when he was running his golf tournaments, which I thought was pretty funny and interesting. So fully packed episode on that one. So if you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to it. And then I guess, Matt, just the common themes throughout the episodes 39 to 41. I'll start with, and I'll let you carry on to it, but as you've been doing this, is transition as transformation, not departure. So each one of them got out and took a different path for how they wanted to live their life or transform their life, but it wasn't a departure from the military. They all still keep those military roots, those veteran roots, to give back.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly maintaining, I think, more of that glass is half full mindset, right? Not dwelling on the fact that you've transitioned or retired and you've left that behind, but there's an opportunity to almost like reinvent yourself, right? Or maybe it's not reinventing yourself, it's doing the things that you weren't able to do while you were in the service. And for Jeff, I'll go back to him for a second. It was, all the things that he's done. I think he was even like a firefighter. Like, there was things that we didn't even talk about with him. But he's just continued to be deliberate and find things that he enjoyed doing. And it's continued to just lead him to more fruitful endeavors by being open and focusing more on the reinventing and transition than just dwelling on, what he had been when he was in the service.
And I think that brings me to, the second common theme with them that I really like about all three of them. And, we talk about our podcast having a double meaning of, dog tags, the ownership of a business, but then also ownership of your life after the military. And for all of them, it was they're owning your next chapter on your terms. And each of them have done that, right? Like from Greg getting out, doing some private equity stuff, getting a business, and then now being a PhD candidate for an emphasis in entrepreneurship through acquisition and giving back that way. Like that was on his own terms of how he wanted to really own his next chapter in life. And then for Eva, having those struggles, those ups and downs, realizing those things, writing a book, and then coming out saying, "This is what I want to do. This is how I'm going to move forward and own who she is now," with being that voice for military members and in particular female veterans. And then Jeff, like you said, just owning that chapter, coming back to a small town and saying, "Hey, I want to do something for this community," and talking with some folks there and opening up the distillery, restaurant, and then the brewery, the restaurant, and then the distillery. He talked about in there that the school superintendent had called him and was like, "Well, Jeff, you now employ more people than we do as a school," and that was a big deal, right? So just owning
Yeah.
that next chapter to help the community that he wanted to give back to.
Yeah. While you were talking, I was reflecting back on when you talked about doing things on your own terms, all the way to like episode 3 with Joe Byerly from the Green Notebook. Being able to set your own routine and set your own schedule, and you're not, is just it's a very odd feeling. Even after 3 months of transitional leave, it's still an odd feeling to have to kind of program your own day and not to have someone tell you where you have to be and when. But again, it's a neat feeling too. So we've seen that theme threaded throughout many of the episodes, going back to some of the first ones that we did.
I guess with that is our 3-episode recap. And I just want to say we didn't make a big deal out of it, but we're over 40 episodes now. This will be number 42. I don't know if we thought it would go this far. I first had this idea about 11 months ago, and we are continuing to have people reach out and want to come on the podcast and be a part of the podcast. So I just, before we sign off here and go into our bonus content, I just want to thank our listeners and followers for word of mouth, liking, following, sharing, subscribing to the podcast on whatever platform. It really is helping us build that community. And at the end of the day, like that's all we care about, is building a community to help those who want to get into entrepreneurship. So from Matt and I, thank you for continuing to stick with us. And we promise our episodes will only get better. And as we continue this journey to help everyone turn their dog tags into ownership.
We're not going anywhere.
We're not. We're staying around. Season 2 will be coming up in January. Today, we're excited to have Giuseppe Grammatico on the show to talk about franchise ownership. Giuseppe is a franchise veteran, coach, author, speaker, and consultant who simplifies the process of franchising and excels at guiding his candidates to business model that best suits their desired lifestyles. Giuseppe, welcome to the Dog Tags Ownership Podcast, and we're so excited to bring you on today to talk about franchise and how franchising is a great fit for our veteran community.
Thanks, Julie and Matt. I really appreciate the invite. Really looking forward to the show.
Yeah. So just to start off, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, so I'm located in New Jersey, born and raised. My first generation, my family came over from Italy in the early 70s and conveniently opened up an Italian restaurant that I grew up into. So that's how I kind of cut my teeth in the business world and owning a restaurant. Loved it, but hated the hours, and nothing against restaurant, just didn't like the hours and holidays and weekends. So I went to school, first person in our family to go to college. Something was missing. I knew that and being an employee wasn't the right fit for me. And later on decided, hey, maybe I should revisit owning a business. I've had side hustles, auto detailing, delivering of business flyers in the neighborhood. And that's when I reached out to a franchise coach, which is what I do today. And he opened up the world of franchise ownership. It wasn't all fast food. There were so many different options. So it's been 2 decades since I've been in the franchise world and self-employed. I always say, what's your success story? My success story is that I was able to own a business and became a soccer coach, not ever missing one of the kids' soccer games, events, and things like that. So that's my success story, my why, and why I got into the reason to get into business ownership.
Yeah, I think that's for a lot of people. The reason they want to get into entrepreneurship is so that they can be their own boss, and then also to be able to be there for their kids and do those things. Could you tell us a little bit of why you think veterans are a good fit for, or military members, veterans are a good fit for owning a franchise?
Yeah, it's there's a lot of reasons. So I was running or listening to another podcast with the president of the IFA, the International Franchise Association, and found out that 1 in 6 franchisees have come out of the military or veterans. I did not know that. I didn't realize that statistic. So I went into my, kind of business to look at, did an analysis, and found that 1 in 5 came out of the military. I did not realize how high the numbers were. So we actually went back to in order to prepare for the shows and why that's the case. And we spoke with everyone that we've worked with that was in the military. And there was a couple things. And the one that really stood out was, the mindset of being able to follow a system. The military was, and I did not serve in the military, but the individuals that we have worked with said that there is structure. You knew kind of the different ranks and what you needed to move up in the ranks, what exactly needed to be done. It was really unlike corporate America, where it was kind of all over the place and didn't know where the future was kind of, laid out for you. The military really laid it out and said, this is kind of like a checklist. This is how you move forward. And the individuals that we have helped over the years, came back and for the most part said the exact same thing. We wanted structure. I call a franchise a business on training wheels. The other thing is, the purpose, what people in the military are driven by. I'm not saying every business necessarily has purpose, but a lot of businesses give a purpose to the community. And it could be simply hiring 5, 10, 15 employees, working with contractors, keeping them busy so that they can feed their families. A lot of franchises, believe it or not, have charity organizations built in to their system so that, for example, we work with a painting franchise and they paint a home for someone in need once a month. The franchisees get together in a certain area and they'll paint a home for someone in need. On the flip side, this was interesting. So we helped a family out of the Navy. This was several years ago, and they decided that although the franchise brand gave purpose to the community, they wanted to create their own charity over and beyond that, which was really nice. So they went ahead and actually created their own charity. So that was kind of it was really cool to hear that it could work both ways. It doesn't necessarily have to go in the system.
Yeah, I was also thinking about risk. Military, we're very familiar with like risk and calculated risk and taking it and minimizing risk. So to me, to be able to go into a franchise versus, I'm going to go open up my own XYZ business, right, with like no blueprint, scares me a little bit. Whereas, like you said, with a franchise where it's that business on training wheels, that's certainly more appealing to me as a veteran, who's, again, deals with risk often in the military. The other thing I was also thinking about too, and maybe something, I don't know, to take a look at on the stats or data, a veteran with 20 or more years of service has a pension. So there's a bit of a safety net. And I know Julie and I'm entering that phase right now, and Julie's around the corner from entering that phase. And it gives you a lot more, when I go back to risk, it gives you a little bit more flexibility, I think, to take certain chances and to take certain opportunities that maybe someone without that safety net, that pension to fall back on. So I know for me that also helps me sleep at night as I think about, real estate. So as I think about that next investment property, that I've got some kind of cushion or something to fall back on. Just some thoughts.
No, I like that. That makes a lot of sense. And, there's a franchise is always going to be risk. We have an education platform, and I always inform, regardless of your background, regardless if it's a franchise, it's a business on training wheels, but the risk is there. How do you reduce the risk? Well, you want to find the right match. What is your skill set? Not necessarily I worked in restaurants. I have restaurant experience, but I was able to lead large teams, manage. I was able to do sales, marketing, networking. There are a lot of, there's essentially a franchise avatar for every franchise we work with. And it'll say, this is the ideal person. So I went from Wall Street to owning a franchise in the building services space. I had no experience whatsoever, but I did have sales and networking, which is the exact role that the franchisee would play into the system.
Giuseppe, you have a book called The Franchise Freedom, and then also your website, The Franchise Guide. Can you just tell our listeners and followers what all you would offer? Say somebody wants to get into the franchising world, and they're looking to get into that. What all you offer through your book, and then also your website, and how you can help them get into franchising.
Yeah, so the best place is GG, my initials, thefranchiseguide.com, and that gets you access to everything. Just like Alex Hormozy says, we have nothing to sell. This is an education platform. We do assist, but really it's to figure out if so a couple things. If a franchise is the right fit, and we ask a series of qualifying questions on our website, and what that franchise may look like. So kind of painting the picture of what this ideal day in a life looks like for you. So we do everything. It's a holistic approach. We meet one-on-one, we coach, and our first call, for example, we'll talk about what you're looking to accomplish. You hating your job is not a good reason to own a franchise. I want to make a boatload of money. Probably not a good fit just for business ownership in general. You kind of have to understand what's involved, but we'll talk about set the expectations. A franchise is still a business. You still have to follow that system. But in my book, I talk about it being an unfair advantage. You have an advantage because the system is built out for you, for those that are looking for that. And then we'll go into things like, okay, if a franchise is a good fit, you have some money to invest, you have a reasonable time frame, and you're okay following a system, we'll look at what the ideal business looks like. So when we talked about, active, passive, what does that look like? What is realistic time can invest in the business? It is definitely not a passive investment unless you're more like I just was on a show earlier this morning, a Shaquille O'Neal, where you have the money and he's invested in hundreds of different locations and you have a team in place. Usually it's someone saying, okay, I want to leave my corporate job. I just lost my job. I'm transitioning out of the military. I want to know what's next. So we'll talk about, okay, what are you good at? What is a reasonable, what's that investment range look like? Do you have a lot of staff? Are they W-2 or contractors? Maybe both. What role are you playing in the business, both day one and day 365? Because we want to make sure in the average day in life, if you hate traveling and visiting businesses, and that's the role of the franchise, that's probably not going to work regardless of what that franchise is offering. We'll look at things like brick and mortar. Do you like for your customers to come to you, or do you prefer to run that business? Maybe it's a mobile option where you're offering a painting or water and smoke mitigation service. So we'll go through all the different examples to figure out, what are the preferences? Not what, people say, well, it depends on what will make more money. I always push back and say, we're just looking for what it looks like. Ideally, you can filter through the brands to see which has the highest, maybe ROI if you look at their item 19 in their agreement and the franchise disclosure document. But let's look at what this ideal business looks like. Some people love brick and mortar, but they don't, for example, a storefront, a Jersey. I'm in New Jersey. We have Jersey Mike's, and but they don't want to wait that long to get open, or they don't want to make that big of an investment. So believe it or not, there are franchises in expense reduction for small business, pet waste removal, business coaching, even executive recruitment. So we talk about all the different examples of what's out there, and then we introduce the individual directly to the brand so that they can continue the process. Why it's holistic is that we don't just say, what do you want? We're not a portal. We'll ask, what do you want? I want food and restaurants. Why? Everyone has to eat. Okay, great. So you're looking for a business that has high demand. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, why don't we look at maybe business coaching? There's also high demand for that, or expense reduction. So we'll give different examples. So that's something that, we offer. We bring funding to the table. What are my funding options? SBA, home equity lines of credit, portfolio-backed loans. We look at all those different options. And finally, bring, if interested, we bring a franchise attorney or refer to a franchise attorney to review all the documents, giving you that peace of mind. So it's a real kind of holistic approach. We assist with sample questions you should be asking the franchisee. It's not a fully exhaustive list, but just to kind of get your questions going like, hey, knowing what you know today, would you do it all over again? That's the $1 million question, as we call it. And we just really kind of assist and give feedback as each of the families we work with go through their due diligence.
And I guess, are there certain franchises that you partner mostly with, or do you partner as they go through your 4-step process, I believe, off your website? Once you find them, hey, this is what type of franchise I think they're looking for, then you just reach out to those different franchises, or are there people that you specifically just partner with to be able to help guide people to those franchises?
Good question. So there's 4,000 franchise companies out there, and we have 2 full-time staff that will go in. I partner with FranChoice as the organization, and they will interview founders, review franchise disclosure documents, interview franchisees to see if the fit's there. Some brands, they don't have the support structure in order to handle and sustain growth, or a lot of franchisees are having issues and closing the doors and things like that. So it's simply a pre-screen. It doesn't take the place of the due diligence, but it breaks down that universe to a more manageable level. When we speak with someone for the first time, we don't have brands in mind. We like to figure out exactly what this ideal business looks like, and then we go to work to see if it's available. There are a lot of brands that are sold out or brands that are not registered. There's 13 registration states. It takes a little bit longer to get registered, and newer brands avoid the states for the first 2 years until they have some type of track record. So we make sure they're registered. We make sure there's availability. We even look for resales in the market. So it's really, if there is a brand that really stands out, we'll go through and figure out what is available. So FranChoice and our back office will help scale that list down to anyone that passed a pre-screen. We have our conversation. So by call number 3, we'll have 2 or 3 brands that not check some, but check off all the boxes to continue the conversation with.
I think one of the things that is very attractive for military members is when we're serving, there's not a lot of choice in, what our day looks like. So as you were talking, Giuseppe, what's going through my mind is, to be able to answer questions and figure out like the best business for me is something that, again, is a very foreign concept, I think, at least to myself, when I served in the military. To be able to have that much control over the outcome of that business is, again, really attractive. And I could see why having a guide to help you through that process is extremely important. We talk about the transition process a lot on our podcast, and having someone that has been there before and done it.
We try and never push franchising. I specialize in business ownership and franchise ownership, but we work with individuals and we figure out together, maybe the corporate world is really what you're looking for. There's no right or wrong. This is all, maybe the timing isn't right. So we're able to introduce someone. Like we had someone, was it last year, that didn't have a LinkedIn profile. We agreed to kind of pause for the next 6 to 12 months, maybe look at a corporate job. So I referred them over to someone that helped them get their LinkedIn profile, resume ready to go. So we're always able to add a resource. But the cool part is, to your point, it's like, okay, there's no right or wrong in a perfect world. What does this business look like? It's okay. It's okay to dream big and say, I had someone say to me, you'll probably think I'm crazy, but I want a business that doesn't have any employees, that I can run on my own. And then if I do want to hire or subcontract, I could do that. And I go, guess what? It exists. Is that a huge part of franchises? Probably not, but there are a handful of brands that we work with that never require ever hiring an employee, if that's your preference, if your preference is to keep it smaller. So it's good. I always say, don't worry about how we get there. Give us your preferences. I'm going to ask why. Are you open to this? Are you open to that? And then it's my job to go out and see what's available. So it's fun. You learn about different industries. Like a roofing franchise has nothing to do with roofing. Most roofing franchises are sales and marketing engines where you're recruiting contractors and managing KPIs, your numbers, right? Your spend on marketing, your close ratios, your profitability. And you're not getting on a roof and replacing shingles. So some people think of, I need to have experience. And the truth is, for I'd say 95% of the time, you need zero experience. You just need the ability to follow the system and that skill set, that sales, that networking, that management skill set in order to run your team. So if you're open to it, there are so many different options.
Yeah. And I just want to say, went over your website today, and I would say it's like very intuitive of how you guys do this. Even so much so, like we've had other franchise folks come on from other franchising companies to talk to our listeners and followers about franchises. But you even have on there like, okay, how much it would probably cost to set up a franchise. And a lot of times when we ask that question, they don't always answer it. And so appreciate that, how to get started, how you guys can help to fulfill people's business ownership dreams of what they want to do, and whether it's through franchising or not. I would just say for our listeners and followers out there, please go to your website, ggthefranchiseguide.com, and you can see all the resources on there and what all you all provide to help folks get after that dream. Military One Percenters, whether you're brainstorming your first business idea, already running a company, or just curious about where to start, DogTags to Ownership is the place for you. Please hit that subscribe button to receive all new episodes. Also, if you know someone who has turned their dog tags into ownership, drop us a DM on social media or tag someone. We are always looking for new guests to bring onto the podcast. And as always, Military One Percenters, thank you for your service. Let's continue this journey, working together to write our next chapter. Until next week, keep pushing to turn those dog tags into ownership.
From dog tags to ownership, heroes take the lead. Stories of veterans building dreams with passion, drive, and speed. From service to success, we're here to inspire the quest. Dog tags to ownership, we're the best.